Good morning. I'm awake. Kind of. Mostly just asleep. Anyway, I'm going to do part 2 of this, and then I'm going to do a quick talk, which is going to be a separate video, I think. No, honestly, fuck it. Make it the same one. I don't care. It's less bullshit for me. I'm trying to cover this because technically this is a work shirt, and I'm not at work, nor am I representing by work. Yeah. All right. Number 2 is on Albert Einstein. So the creator of E equals mc squared, German-born American physicist Albert Einstein, radically transformed our understanding of the universe. An ardent humanist, he took an active and outspoken stand on political and social issues of his time. He philosophized on the meaning of life, love, God, and humanity, and was at the forefront of a campaign waged by atomic scientists in the mid-1940s to educate the world about the implications of nuclear energy and the necessity to halt nuclear weapons development. In 1955, Einstein worked with mathematician Bertrand Russell to reverse the Cold War trend toward nuclear war, and 1 week before his death, Einstein agreed to add his name to a manifesto urging all nations to give up nuclear weapons. The following is from Einstein's classic essay, The World as I See It, which describes his belief in humanity, a peaceful world, and the high mission of science. First off, every time I'm told that Einstein was in was alive during 1940s, I'm like, what the fuck? Because time is weird. And it's like that thing where whatchamacallit, where people will say Lincoln could have sent a fax to a samurai because those were the same time periods, apparently. Anyway, what an extraordinary situation is that of us mortals. Each of us is here for a brief sojourn, for what purpose he knows not, though sometimes he thinks he feels it. But from the point of view of daily life, without going deeper, we exist for our fellow men. In the first place, for those on whose smiles and welfare all our happiness depends, and next, for all those unknown to us personally, with whose destinies we are bound up by the tie of sympathy. 100 times every day, I remind myself that my inner and outer life depend on the labors of other men, living and dead, and that I must exert myself in order to give in the same measure as I have received and am still receiving. I am strongly drawn to the simple life and am often repressed by the feeling that I am engrossing an unnecessary amount of labor of my fellow men. I regard class differences as contrary to justice and, in the last resort, based on force. I also consider that plain living is good for everybody. In human freedom, in the philosophical sense, I am definitely a disbeliever. Everyone acts not only under external compulsion, but also in accordance with inner necessity. Schopenhauer's saying that a man can do as he will, but not will as he will, has been an inspiration to me since my youth up, and a continual consolation and unfailing wellspring of patience in the face of the hardships of life, my own and others. This feeling mercifully mitigates the sense of responsibility which so easily becomes paralyzing, and it prevents us from taking ourselves and other people too seriously. It conduces to a view of life in which humor, above all else, has its due place, and other people, yes. You 1 second. I have a nasal drip. It is disgusting. I find it even more disgusting than most people realize. I'm just used to it. Okay. To inquire after the meaning or object of one's own existence, or of creation generally, has always seemed to me absurd from an objective point of view. And yet, everybody has certain ideals which determine the direction of his endeavors and his judgments. In this sense, I have never looked up upon ease and happiness as ends in themselves. Such an ethical basis I call more proper for a herd of swine. The ideals which have lighted me on my way, and time after time given me courage to face life cheerfully, have been truth, goodness, and beauty. Without the sense of fellowship with men of like mind, of preoccupation with the objective, the eternally unattainable in the field of art and science, research, and scientific research, life would have seemed to me empty. The ordinary objects of human endeavor, property, outward success, luxury, have always seemed to me contemptible. My passionate sense of social justice and social responsibility has always contrasted oddly with my pronounced freedom and the need for direct contact with other human beings and human commodities or communities. I gang my own gait and have never belonged to my country, my friends, or even my immediate family with my whole heart. In the face of all these ties, I have never lost an obstinate sense of detachment or the need for solitude, a feeling which increases with the years. One is sharply conscious, yet without regret, of the limits to the possibility of mutual understanding and sympathy with one's fellow creatures. Such a person, no doubt, loses something in the way of geniality and lightheartedness. On the other hand, he is largely independent of the opinions, habits, and judgments of his fellows, and avoids the temptations to take his stand on such insecure foundations. The fairest thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the fundamental emotion which stands at the cradle of true art and true science. He who knows it not, and can no longer wonder, no longer feel amazement, is as good as dead, a snuffed out candle, a knowledge of the existence of something we cannot penetrate, of the manifestations of the profoundest reason and the most radiant beauty, which are only accessible to our reason in their most elementary forms. It is this knowledge and this emotion that constitute the truly religious attitude. In this sense, and in this alone, I am a deeply religious man. So the next one I'm going to be reading tomorrow is Lucille Ball. She was in Hollywood. Very interesting. That last part really represents, I want to say Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard was definitely religious in the more traditional sense. But it's, in a way, it's like allowing yourself to succumb to the idea of absurdity and living with an absurdity being religion, I guess. Anyway, I think that was a really nice thing. I'm gonna have to rewatch this to more understand it because again, I am asleep. But a couple things I wanted to touch on because should I've been reading, should I've been thinking, should I've been doing. One thing is I had a conversation recently with somebody who I am at this point fairly close to about having to let go of people who have been in your life in the past and how hard it can be. And one thing they said that I ended up calling them out for, and not in whatever. I ended up telling them because they had been raised by a group of people that were very religious and they did not necessarily follow that religion very closely. And so that group of people had started to talk poorly about them behind their back, had effectively not supported them, and had done a lot to work against them and against the goals that they had for their own life. Now, one thing, they didn't blame this group of people for being who they were, and that's something I told them was very good, because you can't blame people for being who they are. You can hope that they act better, but it, it doesn't work. It's not something that actually like makes a massive difference. And so the one thing that they said that I really latched onto was, and I don't remember the exact words, but they were being hard on themselves for how hard it was for them to let go. And effectively, they said something to the ends of, like, it's just either it's just it this is a it's just ridiculous that I feel this way. I should be able to just move on, or I can't believe I feel this way and I just wish I could move on. And I looked at them and I said, I don't think I would be here with you if you didn't feel this way. And they looked at me and they were slightly confused. And I told them that these are people who effectively helped raise them. And so they're people who have been in their life since they were young. And one of the people in particularly who talked poorly about them behind their back was sort of a spiritual leader in the group and somebody that everybody went to for advice. And so she was somebody who that they really looked up to. And instead of seeing this for what it was, which was them effectively having to shunt their family for not supporting their goals, they just saw it as other people. And that's something I told them. And I'm like, hey, this isn't easy. This is never easy. It's not supposed to be. It can't be. Like, unless, granted, there are people who are born with different brain chemistry, whatever. But that was, I think, the biggest takeaway from that conversation is that they had been struggling with this situation where they deeply loved and deeply cared about these people, but these people had been not good to them. And they recognized that, and they were taking the steps of maturity, which is to cut them out of their lives and to no longer be a part of that group. And the hardest thing about that is it's not easy to recognize when somebody that you deeply care about no longer needs to no longer be in your life because they are holding you back. It's not easy to recognize. You can still love someone despite the distance, just love them from afar. And it's not easy to recognize that no matter what, cutting somebody out of your life that you have deep feelings for is terrible. And it's not something everybody can do. It's not something you can do always. There are certain situations where somebody is so ingrained in your life or they have set themselves up in such a way that you rely on them. And it's a type of narcissism and a type of manipulation that is really hard to deal with unless you know what you're doing and unless you're patient enough to set yourself up into a situation where you no longer need them and no longer require their support. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I also struggle with that. I really care about people and very deeply care about them, even though I will forget about them sometimes and I will not call them. And I feel like such an imposter when I do that because I want people to understand how much I care about them. But there are certain people who have been in my life who I have really cared about, who have done me wrong or who have not supported me. And I am not able to continue to be in their lives or to keep them in mind because of the circles they run in or because of how they treat me. And it sucks, and I am always so sorry. and it always hurts having to think about, but it's a decision that I made, knowing it would be better for me, and knowing I would not bring anything into their lives aside from myself and my presence. And I hope they find another person that's like me to fill whatever spot I held. But I just wish them the best. I don't think I necessarily need to be in their life, by the way. So there's that. And I think that's a bit more emotionally heavy. There's also another note of a book I recently finished. It's called 4 Questions. And let me drink. I read a shitload, by the way. I'm a philosophy student, so I try and read as much as I possibly can. I actually really enjoyed the Schopenhauer mention in the Inspirations book. That was cool. I read this. It was given out by, I think, Aesthetic Traveling Monks who were at my school. And it's an interesting book with... The only way I can describe it before is it is an introduction to spirituality for non-spiritual people. Because the more spiritual you become, the more you realize some of what this thing purports is kind of bogus. Not fully, though. Essentially, it goes through, as the title, 4 questions. I think the introduction and the acknowledgments, honestly, and the preface, were much more rich than the questions themselves. But essentially the introduction is that questions are the answer. It's always ask questions throughout your life, sort of thing. And then question 1 is, what is my purpose? Question 2 is, how may I be of service? Question 3 is, what is the lesson? And question 4 is, where am I investing my attention right now? And so question 4, where I'm investing my attention, I think is one of the most important things. Pay attention to what you're paying attention to, and you will understand yourself very well. What is the lesson? That whole section was essentially about how hardships in life are there to teach you things. And I think this is a great mindset to have. However, and big comma there, I think it's important to understand that hardships don't happen for a reason. Life is just chaos. And while, yes, hardships are things that you come across, they're things that you come across in the pursuit of something. And they don't happen because you are in the pursuit of something. They just happen. Sometimes they even happen while you're trying to maintain something or whatever. And it is important to find a lesson in hardships and learn from them and try and grow from them and be a better person. But if you stick yourself in this idea that hardships are there specifically to teach you something, you're going to look at it wrong, because things don't happen in so there's this idea of simple and complex systems. Simple systems are basic, you get board games, right? Board games, you roll a dice, you move the pieces, whatever. You can get really complicated ones, and those, I would argue, get more complex. But a simple system is not that hard. Life is a complicated system. It has many foundational rules. It has a lot of things supporting it. It is really fucking hard. It is complex, and it's adaptive. So not only is it confusing and chaotic, but it adapts to where you are. So it can get more confusing and more chaotic depending on how successful you are, where you're living, whatever. And if you only look at messages, or if you only look at hardships and you only try and understand what the lesson that they provide is, you lose the point that sometimes shit is just hard. Learn something, work through it, but it's just fucking hard. It's not designed for you to learn anything from. It's designed to be a random barrier that gets smacked into your fucking face that you now have to work through. Congratulations. Question 2, how may I be of service? This is a really good one. It's very spiritual, a little wishy-washy. Try and find ways that you can that you can do something for somebody without receiving recognition. I don't like the idea of, oh, you need to find something you can always do without. It's like, if you are always doing something to benefit other people without receiving recognition, you never receive the increased attention that would then increase your capacity to make you be able to do more. Because if you're in a group of 10 people and you're always helping one person out and nobody ever sees it, nobody is going to recognize that you take the time and the effort to help other people. And so they're not going to give you that time and effort to help them. But if you get recognition from it, even every once in a while, you will be able to do better. Now, it's not, you don't do things to seek recognition. You do things. And when recognition comes your way, you accept it. When somebody gives you a compliment, you say thank you. None of this, and I know there's apparently something to do with my generation, and this is vague statistics that I can't back up, but a lot of people from Gen Z were born and raised on this notion of thank you, no problem. And it's, instead of feeling like our efforts are something that we are giving to other people, it's we want to ensure that other people recognize that they are not burdening us with what they're asking. And side note, I think that also has something to do with mental health in our generation. But it's like, your effort is never wasted. Your effort is never not a burden. You are giving a part of yourself and some of your time in order to help other people. So when someone gives you a compliment or says thank you or recognizes the work that you've done, acknowledge that. Don't just let it wash off you. Accept it, internalize it, and then continue on. Don't be an asshole about it either. If someone's like, oh, I thank you for doing this, you're like, oh, you should thank me. Fuck off. No, never. Absolutely not. No. If someone appreciates gratitude for something you did for them, simply say thank you. You can give them a compliment back. That is always very nice and very helpful. But just say thank you. And then question 1, what is my purpose? I think is the stupidest one of them all, because it presupposes, and I think it actually says it in the thing. Hold on. Let me skip to... There's a bunch just about traditional, I think, Indian spirituality in here that I just don't get. So, purpose is the reason for which something exists. Does something need to exist for a reason? It uses a screw as a specific example. It says a screw on the ground is blah, 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 blah. Lying on the street, the screw is insignificant. And it's like, okay, but when you put it in a machine, the book says, when you put it in a machine, it becomes significant because it serves a purpose. The screw lying on the ground isn't insignificant because it's not serving something or because it's not fulfilling a purpose. I think that's a very terrible way to look at things. I don't think, especially as humans, I think us saying that there is a purpose to our lives is really oversimplifying things. We will live our lives and serve many purposes. We will live our lives and help many people and do many things. But we don't exist to fulfill purpose. There is not a reason for which we exist. I firmly believe that we exist as a result of very chaotic systems that created us in the beginning. And I do think the current scientific theories have some value. I don't know if they're true. I don't care to know if they're true. But I think this idea that we were created in this primordial sludge, that we live on a planet that is perfect, and that we are not conscious because of some otherworldly souls. We're conscious because our brains have become so complex, they have generated consciousness in order to separate the mechanical workings of our body from our active thought, in order for us to be able to work on many levels, in order for us to be able to do shit, and in order for us to be able to think about the shit that we've done and do it better next time. And so it's like a cognitive metacognitive thing. Like, that's something that I really want to harp on. Like, there is, like, I don't think purpose exists in that way. You find your own purpose and you determine it yourself. You can say that you have a purpose, but you weren't born to fulfill one, if that makes sense. Anyway, it's getting later. I need to go get to work. Bye.